Well, I can echo what Linda said, and also President Plager, that there's no one more dedicated to Lake Superior Athletics than Chris Dunbar. I had the pleasure of working for her as assistant AD for a while, and then when I was running the facility, I got to watch some of her practice and see her in action. She's just a dedicated, heart and soul type of person, and congratulations, Chris, very well deserved. Next up, we have to share with you some help in introducing our next inductee, an LSSU Hall of Famer himself. He was an assistant coach on our NCAA championship team in 1988, and then head coach of the team in 92 and again in 94. Gentlemen, could you please cue up the Jeff Jackson video, the head coach from Notre Dame hockey.
Thanks to all my friends from Lake Superior State University, and I'm sorry that I couldn't be with you tonight. In my first year as a college assistant coach in 1986-87, I was asked by head coach Frank Anzalone to help replace a 10-man senior class, which included goaltenders Randy Exelby and Joey Shawn. As a rookie recruiter, I spent over 60 days that year on the road, and I remember coming home to our current players calling me, "Hey, part-time." Many of those days were spent in Saskatchewan sliding around the black ice on Highway 10 from Regina to Melville. The focus of my attention was third-year goaltender of the Melville Millionaires named Bruce Hoffort. Bruce had caught my eye in a 50-save performance against the powerful Notre Dame Hounds in Wilcox, Saskatchewan. From that point, I saw Bruce play or practice at least 16 times, and that was before the contact and evaluation rule was put in place by the NCAA. The unheralded goaltender had been overlooked by U.S. schools for over 3 years. So in a special way, Coach Anzalo interrogated me several times on why I felt Bruce was a Division I goaltender. Frank's favorite line was always, "Are you willing to stake your job on this kid?" Often a tough question to answer. In this case, I gave him a definitive yes. Little did I know at the time, almost 30 years ago, I made the call on one player that would impact my coaching career and my life more than any other. During his first preseason practice in the fall of 1987, freshman goalie Bruce Hoffort made his debut to his new coach. Wearing the same ratty equipment he wore in junior hockey and experiencing college hockey for the first time, Bruce had a less than stellar practice. It didn't help that the hyped-up forwards named Vermette, DeCarl, Stauber, and Dowd wanted to impress on their first day of what would become a magical season. During that practice, Frank would be asking me the whole time, "What's wrong with him? What's wrong with him? Does he need glasses?" Eventually, Bruce gave up a goal over his glove on a muffin of a shot by Terry Hasek, and Frank just lost it. Skating back to the team, preparing for the next drill, Frank screamed out at me, "Where in the did you find this goal?" There's no place to hide, and being a resident goalie coach as well, I spent the remainder of the practice on the goal line focusing on the one guy that I had staked my job on. Afterwards, I sat down with Hoffy and was consoling him. I eventually asked him, "What was the last time you had your eyes checked?" Surprisingly, he said, just prior to departure from his home in North Battleford, Saskatchewan, to the Sioux. When I asked him what the results of the eye exam was, he said, "I only went to get my prescription refilled, Coach, for my contact lenses." Then he went on to say, "But Coach, I don't wear my contacts for practice because I want the puck to look brighter in games." For his safety and mine, Bruce decided to wear his contacts in practice. As a freshman goaltender, Bruce went on to lead the nation in goals against and a 2.65 goals against average. He ranked second in the save percentage at .909. Bruce also led the country in winning percentage with a 23-4-3 record. He made an amazing 49 saves during a thrilling 4-3 overtime victory against St. Lawrence University in the national championship game in Lake Placid, New York. Bruce was named the 1988 NCAA Tournament MVP. He was selected to the CCHA first team in both 1988 and 1989, and the CCHA Player of the Year in 1989. Bruce was also named a first-team All-American and a Hobey Baker Award finalist in that same season. Playing only 2 seasons before signing with the Philadelphia Flyers, Bruce ranks 2nd and 5th in Lake Superior State single-season wins and 5th in single-season saves in 1989. He ranks 4th in career wins at 50 and a goals against average of 2.68. Bruce ranks 9th in career save percentage at .900. He recorded 6 career shutouts. Bruce went on to play 3 years of professional hockey in Philadelphia, Hershey, Kansas City, and San Diego before retiring in 1992. He returned to Lake Superior State and the Sioux in the summer of 1993 to complete his degree in business administration and act as the Lakers' volunteer goalie coach. He married a local girl, Terry, from Sioux, Ontario in 1990 and has 2 sons, Trevor and Michael. And Bruce currently resides in Appleton, Wisconsin. Bruce Hoffort certainly made the most of his time at Lake Superior State University. I'm sure he would say that LSSU and Laker hockey impacted his trajectory of his life in a major way. A man with great humility, Bruce will not boast about his impact on our university, community, and hockey program. In April 1988, Bruce played the role of Superman with his performance in the NCAA tournament. That title win propelled the Laker hockey program into a college hockey powerhouse for many seasons to come. He helped this small, unheralded, but proud university gain more recognition in one night in northern New York than anyone associated with our university could have ever imagined. Personally, I got to know Bruce through the recruiting process and as his coach, and later as a friend. He even lived in my small house on Ryan Street in the summer of 1993 while taking classes. He is an honest man, a man of character, and he's worked for everything he's earned. He could remain calm in crisis and humble during all of his successes. Bruce is a soft-spoken man that always let his actions speak volumes. Bruce being inducted into the Lake Superior State Athletic Hall of Fame is well-deserved. We are all very proud of you, Hoffy, and we thank you, and I thank you for your part in my career and in Laker hockey history. Congratulations.
Every time I'm around or see Jeff Jackson, I just think, man, it would have been incredible to play for a guy like that. Just he hasn't, as you can see from that video, he hasn't forgotten where he came from. Whenever we need him to come to an event or support the program, he's always there. So we thank Jeff Jackson for that heartfelt speech about Bruce. Next, we have someone to present Mr. Hoffort. Probably one of the most stressful roles in anyone's life is to be the parent of a goalie. Think about it. 5 other guys can make a mistake, come down, goalie makes one small mistake, they turn a red light on, and the crowd goes bananas. And it's always the goalie's fault. That's why they're a little off. They kind of scare me. They kind of scare me a little bit. And usually the better they are, the loonier they are. But I don't think that's the case with Bruce. What I'd like to do now is ask Bruce's dad, Philip, to come forward and present the award to Bruce.
It is pretty bright when you get up there, isn't it? I'm really glad to be here, and I'm glad to see Bruce receive this acknowledgement. It's been great. The people that contacted me asked to fill in a little bit of his younger years in hockey, and that's what I'll tell you about. Bruce was born in Estevan, Saskatchewan in 1966, which coincidentally is 50 years to get together with the team, the history of this team here. So coincidentally, they're both 50 years old. But Bruce we moved from Estevan, which was my home area, up to North Battleford, and Bruce's youth was spent in North Battleford, Saskatchewan. It's about 90 miles north of Saskatoon for people that don't know our Canadian geography. But we're pretty proud and we're pretty much hockey people in Saskatchewan. We've had, over the years, produced over 100 NHL hockey players. It's a big number to us in the fact that we've been less than 1 million people for a long time. And provinces like Ontario produce more, but they've got more people. We've got the likes of Gordie Howe that we just had his final remains buried a week ago in Saskatoon, Sask. It is wished for both him and Colleen to be buried there. Small town Saskatchewan has its benefits. I was able to meet him on several occasions and go out and share a drink with him and talk to him. That's what it is when you live in a small province, a small place. In Bruce's case, Bruce started playing hockey as soon as he could. That was about when he was 6 years old. And kids at that age were playing in just what we call a house league, and they played every game, every opportunity they had. And what developed in that hockey right through till about when you're 12 years old was just good hockey, and you're learning the game. But you also develop a lot of friends, and I'm sure that it would be very nice to have had lots of Bruce's buddies, we called them, that played hockey with him back in those days, which helped develop his abilities. Bruce loved to play hockey, and when they got old enough to where we could get to provincial competitions, which came later, he got into some competition there where we went after some provincial championships. Bruce started in the junior ranks playing junior B in Nipawin, Saskatchewan, and moved after the first season in Nipawin. He moved to Melville in what we call junior A hockey. And Bruce played there for 3 years, and in this final year in Melville, the team didn't get too far in the playoffs, but a team down the road from us, Humboldt, Saskatchewan, won the province, and they selected Bruce to be their goaltender that they were allowed to pick up, and they proceeded to go on to try to win the championship for Western Canada in junior A hockey. And they made it to the finals, and unfortunately we lost the very last game against a pretty powerful team from British Columbia. Same time that the hockey years for Bruce was also baseball. He did both. When Bruce wasn't playing hockey, he was playing baseball. And happens to be that most of those kids were the same bunch. The little Scotty Kobrinskis, different ones that they were buddies. The first game that I remember with Bruce and Scotty was a short little guy. His sweater was so long that at the tail end of the sweater hung down, and he would hook his skates and trip because his sweater was down. Bruce was in the net because he decided that's what he wanted to be. Well, those two kids went on the year before the Sioux won the national title. The Lakers won the national title. Well, Scotty Kobrinski was the MVP and the man over in North Dakota fighting Sioux, and they won the national title. So, by coincidence, two kids that started out playing hockey when they're 6 years old, both ended up winning national titles a year apart in 2 different states. Kind of nice to see. The baseball thing was the same, and I think that why Bruce did as well as he did is because of that kinship between these young, I keep calling them kids because that's what they were. With them playing together and sticking together, Bruce would let in a goal, Scotty go get one back for him. That's how it worked. And I think some of that happened here when Bruce got to the Sioux, that he developed some great companions with him, support from the likes of Jeff Jackson you saw in the film, all come together to making a winning championship and a national championship for the Lakers. Coming to the Sioux for Bruce was life-changing career, or life-changing event, really. And the biggest thing that affected his life was meeting Terry Jeske here, right here at the old North Center. And 25 years later, they've got 2 nice sons, and Terry has been a tremendous resort and friend for Bruce, and a great daughter-in-law for us. The second thing with being here was the national title, and then the third thing was to get the opportunity to go from here to play in the NHL. That's pretty good, and it makes us pretty proud to see that happen. And so I thank the Sioux, and I'm very proud to speak on behalf of my wife Sharon on Bruce's accomplishments here. Okay, Bruce, your turn.
Keeping up with the times here, I've got my iPhone out for my speech, so. And Terry and I aren't just friends, we get busy. We sound like we're just buddies or something. So before I forget, it is bright, but I like this. I don't want to see all the faces. I like to hide behind my mask a little bit, but I do want to thank the school. Like my dad said, Lake Superior State University, really for me was everything. I mean, I came from, you know, Jeff made it sound like he was recruiting me and he saw me play 19 times or whatever he said. I think he's making that up. Honestly do. And I'll tell you a little bit of the story about that as we go along. But I think he stumbled on to me, and, you know, nobody was noticing me. I was languishing in junior hockey. To get a scholarship to come to Lake State, I mean, it was the biggest thing for me. And obviously that got my education, gave me a chance to turn professional. Met Terry, and I could list the list of benefits from being here. So I want to thank the university, you know, first and foremost, just for putting something like this on. Very, very proud being inducted into the Hall of Fame, and it's, you know, Dougie LaProd's here and that have been inducted as a team. You know, we were inducted, the '88 team was inducted 2005, I guess, and that was one thing. That was a big honor, and it's an honor for all of us. But I thought that's where it would end for me, and that was enough. You know, to be a Hall of Famer in any way, shape, or form, I was extremely proud. So to get this call, you know, several months ago that I was going to be inducted as an individual, really blew me away. I was shocked. Something I'm very proud of, and it's hard to put into words, but I'm very appreciative of the university, you know, for this honor. I want to thank my coaches, Coach Jackson, starting with Frank Anzalone though, and I wanted to get Frank involved. We know Frank's had some history with the school. You may or may not have heard that over the years, but maybe didn't leave on the best of terms and had a rocky career. But in my mind, he was kind of the dream coach for me. I needed a coach like that, and I guess like Tom said, you know, goalies are a little bit oddballs, and my dad will remember we had a crazy coach like Frank in midget hockey when you're 15, 16 years old. His name was Bruno Keller, and he was like Frank, you know, on steroids. We wouldn't even get water in practice. He would be bag skating us. We had no water. You couldn't bend down on your knees. You couldn't lean on the boards. And I guess towards the end of the year, we had parents got together. Pretty sure my dad wasn't one of them, and they said, we're going to vote to get rid of this guy. He's crazy. And every player, the hidden vote, put it in a hat, and they tallied up the votes, and everybody but one voted to get rid of him. And I was the one that said, let's keep him. You know, I love this guy. And that was Frank for me. He pushed my buttons. He knew how to get me to be at my best. I think he knew how to get all of our guys to be at their best. So I owe a lot to him, a lot to Jeff. I'll talk more about Jeff later, and Jimmy Rock as well. He was a big influence on me as a guy that was about my age. You know, I came here at 20 years old. I guess I was 21 as a freshman, and Jim couldn't have been that much older than me. He had just graduated as a senior. So we kind of had a connection, and he had ways of getting me to be at my best as well. Boy, my mouth is dry. Anybody got that drink still? No. I want to thank the fans. Yeah, should have brought some water. I want to thank the fans, the supporters of Laker hockey and Lake Superior State University. Really without the fans, and including everybody here, none of this is possible. We can't go out and play a big basketball game or a hockey game or wrestling match and the building is empty and there's nobody to play for. Especially in hockey, I think, and maybe basketball too. It's really entertainment at its highest levels. People pay a ticket price to go watch you play. It's that or to go to the movies or to do something else to be entertained. So if the fans aren't there and involved in it, it's really kind of falls flat. So anyway, I took some notes, as I said. I know with goalies, they always get heckled for taking one too many shots in the head, and that's probably true with me. I've had my fair of shots in the head, especially Dougie the Prod, wherever he is. He liked to warm me up by hitting me in the head with pucks. I knew he was trying to pick a corner, but thank you. But I do thank, or congratulate the other inductees, Chris, who I think was sorely lacking in her praises of Al Dunbar. Where's Al? That was a really, really good catch. Love Al. We coached together with Scott Bork a few years back. And Randy Sealer. Randy was the RA, I guess that's a resident advisor for the building that we lived in over at the Village. So he was in charge of, I guess, keeping everybody in order. And I don't know if you remember this or not, but he was a bad dude back in the day. Very intimidating, still is. And one day I decided to borrow his VCR. I wanted to take it, we were watching tapes, we were hanging out in the room, and just figured I'll borrow his VCR, I'll give it back to him whenever I give it back to him. And the girls came over from C2, I lived in C1, Randy I think was in C3. And they said, hey, you done with the VCR? Can we have it? And I said, oh yeah, why not? I'm not thinking about it. And until the next day, Randy came down and was looking for his VCR. And I didn't have a really good story to tell. I said, yeah, I borrowed it out to the girls in C2. And I swear to God, I thought he was going to kill me on the spot. I've never really had the fear of God put into me too many times, but it was into me at that point in time. So he's he was a superstar in those days and a tremendous, choice for the Hall of Fame. And I think that's the theme for a lot of us, at least from what I've heard from other hockey players is, you've been a great player, but what took the school so long to get you guys inducted? And I think that holds true for Chris. It certainly holds true for me and for Randy, but when I think about the guys from the basketball team in the 70s, they've been waiting even longer, so I guess we can't complain too much. But anyway, I wanted to thank my dad, I guess, first and foremost. I think he raised me right. I think looking back, probably raised me a lot like, Frank kind of treated his team. He was very hard on us, demanding. It was life in the 60s and 70s, and that's how parenting was. So not like today, we kind of coddle our kids. But he taught me the value of hard work, and he taught me ultimately, to not quit anything that you started. And so when I look at, Jeff's claim of scouting me all these times, and I'm sure he did, but one story I never told anyone before, and I guess I attribute all my success or even coming to Lake State because of my dad telling me not to quit. It was my 4th season of junior hockey in Saskatchewan, really not getting any college offers, nothing. Just having a good time playing hockey was good enough for me. But in the back of my mind, I did want to go to college. That would have been nice. But right around Christmas time, my last year, me and 2 of my knucklehead teammates kind of pulled a Denny Lemieux, if you watched the movie Slapshot, went to our coach's house, sat down with him and said, trade me, right bleeping now. And of course, being Canadians, we were very nice about it. I think we said sorry a few times after that. But we did. We went home, we said I've had it. I literally went to Beaver Lumber in my hometown, filled out a job application, and I was either going to get traded or I was going to quit and I was going to get a job. And I remember my dad saying, this doesn't feel right. You never quit what you started. You owe it to yourself, you owe it to your teammates, you owe it to everybody in Melville, your coaches. So, and of course, I was 20 years old. I had 2 months left of junior hockey remaining. Nobody was going to trade for me. Any team that was good, that was winning, had good goaltenders already. And so nobody made the call. My coach called me back, though, and said, look, we need you. We'll take you back. And I gladly went back. And within, I believe, about 1 to 2 weeks, after I got back to Melville, that's when Coach Jackson was making his final trip through Saskatchewan. He was going to scout the Humboldt Broncos goaltender, Weyburn Red Wings goaltender, and Estevan Bruins goaltender. He was making a 3-game road trip. And you'll never guess who was playing all 3 of those games on that scouting trip with Jeff Jackson's. It was Melville Millionaires and me. And we got pounded all 3 games. I think I gave up 5 goals one night, 6 and 7 the next. But Jeff said, I love the way that you never quit. And I just thought, geez, I almost quit literally 2 weeks ago. And he would have never seen me play. And maybe he saw me play before, but I'm sure he would not have been knocking on my door trying to get a hold of me and wonder where I was. I wouldn't have been scouted at Lake State. So that all goes back to my dad. My recruiting trip, of course, and that's a whole nother story. The things I remember about recruiting trip was Coach Anzalone and his wife Teresa, for those that remember Teresa. He took me to, I want to say, the Knife and Fork fine dining establishment. I'm not sure if it's still up in the sewer or not. No. And I ordered chicken teriyaki because I'd never heard of chicken teriyaki before from North Battleford. And had that, but right off the bat, Frank starts grilling me with questions. And all of these things I've never heard of. I literally had never really heard of picking a major in college. What's your major going to be? I'm just dumbfounded. Like, are you joking? What are you talking about? And what's your curriculum, or what? All these different university terms. I had no idea. So he'd ask me these things, and he'd turn to Teresa and say, "This he's not smart. He's not going to make it through college." Then you go back through a series of questions again, and you go, "This kid's too wimpy, Teresa. He can't play college hockey." Back to more questioning, and back to more insults. And I thought, how is this what a recruiting trip is supposed to be? But I knew that this was kind of like Bruno Keller, that I loved as a coach, and I could play for a guy like that. So ultimately, they offered me a scholarship, and it kind of went from there. But Frank, I owe him a lot. Hopefully, I think they're taping this from what I've been told, so I'm hoping he'll get a copy of that tape, as will Jeff and Jimmy. But I thank him for that. And he had ways to push all of our buttons, as I mentioned earlier. I don't know if you guys remember, some of you probably will, the big hockey fans that might be here. And I know Doug will remember this, and Dave Thomas. The song that we used to have to come out to at the start of the game in 1987. I can't remember if this is for warm-ups or if it was for when we're getting ready to go. Both teams are coming out for the start of the first period. Does anybody remember, and call it out if you can remember, the song that we had to come out to every time right off the bat? Has it been 30 years already? Sorry, that's a bad question. It was Whitney Houston's "I Want to Dance with Somebody." And I'm telling you, he would tell us that he did that because of the alumni. We've got older fans. We don't have all this heavy metal. And I tell you, I bet you anything he did it because he knew it would bother us. I know I hated it. I was embarrassed. I wanted to crush the teammates, because I didn't think I was a Nancy boy. And I'm sure everybody else felt the same way. And he did little things like that. I could tell. I'm not much of a storyteller, but I'm sure we could sit down and tell stories about what these coaches did to push our buttons in a positive way that really paid dividends. Things that people would never heard about. And same thing with Jimmy Rock. I thank Jimmy for this honor. He was a big part of that as well. And he kind of learned from Frank. He was under Frank's. I think Frank was head coach all 4 years when Jimmy was here as a player. And then he became the volunteer assistant. So he kind of took after Frank, I thought. And one story remains that, hopefully I can take up a little bit of time and tell a couple stories, but remains when at the end of practice, I think it was the day before we would play the Friday night game at home, Frank used to always have showdown. So he'd pull somebody off the bench in practice and say, okay, you're going, you and me, we're going to do showdown against whoever was going to start on Friday or Saturday. So they'd do that, 3 pucks, whoever wins, wins, and everybody laughs, you go home. I would play showdown after that, usually with Jimmy Dowd and Tim Breslin. We had this game we'd play showdown for a little puck that we invented a trophy out of and would see who win. Well, this day, and for those that are local, you might remember Tim Paris. He was our equipment manager back then, local Sioux, Michigan guy. And he went on to be the equipment manager with the New York Rangers, and I'm not sure where he's at these days, but it'd be nice if he was here as well. He was a big influence on a lot of us. He had his skates on, and he was out there, he wanted to dangle around and shoot on the goalies, and he was not a very good hockey player, for those that knew Tim. So he could barely skate, and he was kind of dangling around, and he came in on showdown on me, and he was about to beat me, kind of had me going the wrong way, and I flipped around backwards thinking, I'm dead. If he scores, I'll never hear the end of it, and turned my ankle. So I just kind of skated it off and hit it, and I didn't want anybody to know or to see it, and got my skate off, and my ankle was huge, and I figured, I gotta tell somebody. So Jimmy Rock comes by, and I say, Jimmy, hey, and keep in mind, we had a system in place, even midway through my freshman year. Mike Greenlay played every Friday night, I played every Saturday night like clockwork. And I just assumed, well, this is the way it's going to be, so I'll tell Jim so he knows I can't play Saturday. And I'll never forget it. Jimmy, who probably was 23 years old, stared me right in the eye, and I said, Jimmy, I can't go, my ankle, I'm done. And he goes, oh, hey, that's no big deal. Honestly, I don't even think you were dressing. I think Reed was going to dress. It's no big deal. Well, good luck with your ankle when you took off. I'm thinking, what the hell? I thought I was, relied upon goaltender, and here I'm just another, cog in the machine. But I say that just to say that they put you in a scenario in your mind. You had to fight for your job every single practice. Every moment of every day was important. And when somebody says something like that to you, you don't necessarily take it in a negative way. You just realize, holy crap, I better bring it every single day, or my job's not going to be my job. So that was huge for me. Am I going long, Coach? Keep going. I'm almost done, believe me. Yeah, hopefully I'm not mumbling too much. But I want to thank, I guess, one more thing about Jeff Jackson, and Doug will relate to this. We had a nickname for Jeff. Well, we called him Pepto, because he was kind of the Pepto-Bismol for Frank's, acid, I guess, or whatever. The acid reflux of Frank Anzalone was quenched by Jeff. So Frank would get under your skin or push your buttons too much, and of course you'd go to Jeff's office, and you'd just lay it all out there, and you'd tell him, how much you hated this, and Frank said this, and Frank said that. He'd make you feel great, put you all back together, and off you go, and he got the nickname Pepto. And I thought, that's a lot like my relationship with my parents. My dad tended to be like that. He'd push my buttons. He'd always want me to be doing a little bit better and be hard on me. And I'd go to my mom, and she'd be like, kind of like a version of JJ in a strange way. He used to silver hair as well. But so she was kind of Pepto, and we sort of had that same thing. Frank was like my dad, and Jeff was like my mom. And I thank my mom so much, and my dad and Jeff as well for that relationship. But just to close up, I want to thank others. I'm not sure if Margie Soames made it here or not. I haven't seen her, but I want to mention Gil. He's passed on, but he was such a huge influence on all of us that played at Laker hockey. For a small program, for a bunch of usually misfit kids that were all kind of banded together in 87 to 88 and beyond, we needed things like chemistry and edge that you could beat your opponent with. And Gil was such a big part of that chemistry. He really was. So we're going to miss Gil, and I wanted to mention Gil as well as Bud Cooper. was a huge part of the program from beginning to end. Lastly, my teammates, I know a lot of them, weren't able to make it, but lots of Facebook, everybody gets Facebook messages now and texts and all of that, so that's great to keep in touch with people that way. But I know for a fact, after playing, 4 years of junior hockey on some of the worst teams that I ever had played on, I literally played in a game that I lost 15-1 and let in all 15 goals because I just kept trying hard, so I couldn't get pulled if I wanted to. So playing on this team was just like a dream come true, and I knew for a fact we had the best team in college hockey because I got to watch it pretty much every day, either on the bench or in the net. And there's no way you can get this type of honor, like Chris said, without your teammates around you, good people around you, good coaches. There's no such thing as a good coach without good players. It's a true statement. And there's really no such thing as a great goalie or Hall of Fame goalie without an awesome team in front of them. So I owe every single one of those guys everything. And that's, really that's the reason I got the starting nod in the playoffs in 87, 88. Frank interviewed me and Mike Greenlay separately and grilled us. Why should you play in the playoffs and not him? And I told him, we have the best team in college hockey. The only way we can lose is if the goalie screws it up, and I'm not going to screw it up. And that's kind of where I left it with him. And I, honestly, there'd be no Hall of Fame for me without my teammates. And I thank them very much. I thank all of you, and that's it. Thank you very much.
Great stories, great stories. I was a student assistant coach with Frank Angelo in 1 year, and Bill Crawford and I often think we could write a book just based on that 1 year on some of the things that happened. But he knew how to motivate those guys, and they were talking about this year's hockey team only having one senior. Well, that 88 team only had two, Terry Hossick and Craig Houston, and they went on and kind of were a Cinderella thing and won the first national championship here that just really changed so many things in talent. I remember being here, and I remember that big goal that Vermette scored. It was a sloppy goal against St. Lawrence, but it was a beautiful goal. I remember exactly where I was when that happened. Bruce, well deserved, very well deserved. Excuse me.